From Siberia to Pyongyang, the billion-dollar slave pipeline. The phrase sounds noble, dollar heroes. It suggests pride, hard work, sacrifice. But for the men and women who bear that title, it is a cruel disguise for something darker: modern slavery. Across the world, from the icy forests of Siberia to the bustling ports of Europe, tens of thousands of North Koreans live and work under conditions most of us could not imagine. They build apartments, weld ships, and process seafood, but their labor is not their own. The moment they arrive, their passports are taken, their wages are seized, their families left behind in North Korea become hostages of the state, insurance to guarantee obedience. If one dares to run, the punishment is not just exile. It can mean torture, imprisonment, or death, not only for the worker, but for the people they love. And yet, this hidden workforce is worth a fortune. Experts estimate it earns the regime between $500 million and $1 billion every year. Money that should be theirs is instead funneled through layers of party officials, converted into hard currency, and delivered back to Pyongyang, often in suitcases or diplomatic pouches immune to inspection. It is money that bypasses international sanctions, money that props up a collapsing economy, money that pays for nuclear missiles, luxury cars, and the survival of one of the most secretive regimes on Earth. North Korea, one of the poorest countries in the world, has turned its own citizens into its most valuable natural resource. In a nation where the average person survives on less than $2 a day, exporting people has become more profitable than exporting coal. This is the hidden world of the dollar heroes, a world where lives are traded for foreign currency, a world that connects sweat and suffering in faraway worksites to missiles launched over the Pacific. And it is happening right now, in plain sight.
The hidden world of dollar heroes. It is one of the darkest lies told by the North Korean regime. Behind that name hides an army of more than 50,000 North Koreans scattered across the globe. From the frozen forests of Siberia to the seafood factories of China, from shipyards in Eastern Europe to construction sites in the Middle East. Their mission is not voluntary. They are exported people, a human resource sold by Pyongyang, generating up to $500 million to $1 billion every year for Kim Jong-un's regime. For comparison, $1 billion is more than North Korea's entire legal export industry in some years. It is enough to fund dozens of ballistic missile launches, to import fleets of Mercedes cars for the elite, or to supply the country's vast military apparatus for months. And all of it is earned not through innovation or trade, but through the forced labor of its own citizens. The system works like this. Workers are selected carefully, often from families considered politically loyal. Before leaving, they undergo ideological training. Most are required to leave behind children and spouses, human hostages to guarantee their obedience abroad. The moment they arrive in Russia, China, Poland, or anywhere else, their passports are confiscated. Their movements are restricted. They live in cramped dormitories or guarded barracks. And the money? A North Korean worker abroad may technically earn a few $100s a month, but by the time the regime takes its cut, often more than 90% of their wages, the worker might receive only scraps, sometimes as little as $10 to $50 a month for backbreaking 12-hour shifts. And yet, Pyongyang celebrates them as heroes. But who is the real hero here? The man who lays bricks in -30-degree Siberian winters for $20? Or the regime that pockets the rest, laundering it into US dollars through shadowy bank transfers, couriers carrying suitcases of cash, or even diplomatic pouches that can't be searched at airports? This is not just labor exploitation, but a global financing machine. The United Nations has described North Korea's overseas labor force as modern slavery. The US State Department calls it human trafficking on an industrial scale. Yet despite sanctions, the system endures, because too many countries benefit. Russia uses these workers to build apartments and infrastructure at a fraction of normal wages. Chinese seafood factories hire them because they are cheaper and more obedient than local labor. Even Europe has been complicit. Investigative journalists found North Koreans working in Polish shipyards as recently as the mid-2010s on projects tied to German clients. The workers are invisible in the global economy, but their fingerprints are everywhere. That salmon fillet at your supermarket? It may have been packed by a North Korean woman in a Chinese factory, working 16 hours a day under surveillance. The steel in a Moscow apartment block? It may have been welded by a North Korean man, sending dollars straight into Pyongyang's nuclear program. The contradiction is staggering. North Korea's GDP per capita is estimated at less than $700 a year, making it one of the poorest countries on Earth. Food shortages are chronic. Hospitals lack electricity and medicine. And yet, the regime collects hundreds of millions in hard currency every year by exploiting its citizens abroad. For Pyongyang, people are not citizens, they are exports. And the money? It doesn't flow into public goods. It doesn't build schools or hospitals. Experts and defectors alike confirm where it really goes, funding the nuclear weapons program and the ICBMs that threaten global security, financing the lavish lifestyle of the Kim dynasty with luxury cars, private estates, and rare liquors imported from Europe, keeping the ruling elite and military loyal with a steady supply of foreign goods. So when the regime calls these workers dollar heroes, it is not about their heroism, it is about the dollars, lifeblood dollars that keep one of the world's most brutal dictatorships alive. And this raises the question, why does the world allow it? Because the truth is uncomfortable. Cutting off this labor pipeline would cost Russia, China, and even parts of Europe billions in cheap labor. It would force companies to pay fair wages. It would expose global supply chains to scrutiny. So instead, silence prevails. Governments turn a blind eye. Corporations shrug. Consumers unknowingly buy products touched by the suffering of these invisible workers. And all the while, the North Korean regime laughs. Because they have discovered the perfect loophole. When you can't export coal, when sanctions choke off your industries, when the world blocks your banks, you can always export people. This is the hidden world of North Korea's dollar heroes. The human cost behind the numbers. The numbers are staggering: 50,000 North Koreans overseas, up to 90% of their wages seized, $500 million to $1 billion funneled back to Pyongyang each year. But behind those statistics are human lives, stories of fear, broken families, and stolen dignity. Meet one former worker who fled from a construction site in Russia. He recalls, "I worked 12 hours a day. Out of my entire monthly wage, I was given only 7%. The rest was taken by the state. At night, I cried under a blanket because my family was still in North Korea and I couldn't protect them." This isn't unusual. Testimonies gathered by defectors and human rights groups reveal a consistent pattern. Workers toil 12 to 16 hours a day, often in freezing conditions. They live in cramped dormitories, sometimes without heating or proper food. Their supervisors, often party officials, monitor every move. And most devastating of all, their families back home are kept as hostages of loyalty. The regime requires that overseas workers leave behind spouses and children. If a worker escapes, the punishment falls on those loved ones: interrogation, imprisonment, sometimes even execution. This family leverage system is one of the most effective tools of control Pyongyang has ever created. One defector described the agony. "I never thought about escaping, not because I was loyal, but because my parents would suffer if I did. My freedom wasn't mine to choose." The financial trap is equally cruel. Workers are forced to make party duty payments, monthly fees to the regime, disguised as revolutionary contributions. A decade ago, the fee was around 15,000 Russian rubles. Today, it has doubled, sometimes reaching 30,000 to 50,000 rubles per month. For context, that's almost an entire month's wage for a Russian construction worker. For a North Korean, it's simply debt they can never escape. Some workers survive on less than $20 a month. Others return home with nothing, or worse, with debts. The very system designed to extract wealth from their labor leaves them broken, impoverished, and permanently indebted to the regime. And yet, the propaganda never stops. Posters in their dormitories remind them, "Work for the great leader. Your sacrifice is your honor." State-run TV back home hails them as heroes bringing glory to the nation. Families in Pyongyang may even receive medals on their behalf, but what they don't receive is money. The psychological toll is enormous. Isolated from the outside world, forbidden from interacting with locals, many workers turn to alcohol as their only escape. One defector admitted, "On Sundays, we had nothing, no freedom, no family, no future. Drinking was the only way to numb the emptiness." And sometimes, the cost is life itself. In Poland, a North Korean shipyard worker was engulfed in flames after a welding accident. With 95% of his body burned, he stumbled out like a human torch before collapsing. He later died in the hospital. His story surfaced briefly, then disappeared. One death among many, hidden behind closed contracts and silent governments. Behind every $1 billion that Pyongyang collects, there are thousands of invisible tragedies. Parents who never see their children grow up. Husbands and wives separated for decades. Workers who die nameless, their wages stolen, their sacrifices erased. This is the human cost behind the numbers. A cost measured not only in dollars stolen, but in lives broken. And it raises a chilling reality. For every missile North Korea launches, there is a hidden army of men and women who paid for it with their freedom. Money flows from Siberia to Pyongyang. Before dawn, North Korean workers shuffle out of guarded dormitories in Vladivostok, Chinese ports, and Polish shipyards. By nightfall, they return exhausted, bruised, underpaid, and watched. For Pyongyang, every hammer strike and packed seafood box is more than labor. It's currency. Foreign currency. North Korea doesn't want rubles, yuan, or zloty. It wants US dollars, the kind that buy missile parts, luxury goods, and loyalty. The route from Siberian sweat to Kim Jong-un's vault is a masterclass in shadow finance. Step number 1. Collection at the source. Local firms pay wages, but workers rarely see them. North Korean managers, party officials, and security agents seize most of it. Some workers take home as little as $20 a month. Step number 2. Conversion into hard currency. Supervisors channel funds through shell companies and sympathetic banks in Russia and China. Seafood wages in yuan become US dollars, far more valuable abroad. Step number 3. Party duty payments. Workers must pay loyalty contributions. Once 15,000 rubles, these fees can reach 50,000 today, often more than their take-home pay. Failure to pay risks punishment or repatriation, a virtual death sentence. Step number 4. Transport back to North Korea. Cash is couriered via Beijing or Moscow. Sometimes diplomats smuggle it in pouches immune to customs. Inside, bundles of $100 bills earned through slavery. Step number 5. The final destination. In Pyongyang, money enters the court economy, a secret fund controlled by the Kim family. It dwarfs the public budget and bankrolls palaces, imported luxuries, and, above all, nuclear weapons. The scale before UN sanctions tightened in 2017, North Korea's overseas labor force earned up to $1 billion annually. Despite restrictions, analysts say hundreds of millions still flow in each year through loopholes and weak enforcement. Why it matters. Hard currency is North Korea's lifeline. With GDP per capita under $700, the regime relies on foreign cash to buy advanced technology, luxury imports, and elite loyalty. Sanctions choke coal exports and trade, but there's one export no resolution can halt: its people. Global complicity. Russian companies hiring North Korean labor, Chinese seafood processors, and European shipyards tied to shell firms all feed this system. They don't just exploit cheap workers, they bankroll missiles and sustain one of the world's most repressive regimes. So next time a North Korean missile streaks across the Pacific, remember, it may have begun with a worker in Siberia swinging a hammer for 12 hours in -30 cold for $20. From Siberia to Pyongyang, from seafood plants to missile silos, this is the hidden money flow, a chain of exploitation that begins with broken backs and ends with nuclear threats. The global dilemma. The story of North Korea's dollar heroes leaves the world with a haunting question. Why does this continue? The answer is uncomfortable. For Russia, it is about cheap labor. A North Korean construction crew will work longer hours for a fraction of the cost of local workers. For China, it is about trade competitiveness. Seafood plants and factories can cut costs by using North Koreans, who have no power to negotiate wages or conditions. Even in Europe, loopholes in labor laws allowed workers from Pyongyang to slip quietly into shipyards and construction projects. For governments, it is about politics. Confronting North Korea's labor exports means clashing with China and Russia, both permanent members of the UN Security Council. Both nations profit from this exploitation, and both shield Pyongyang from the full weight of sanctions. And so, silence prevails. Deals are signed, containers are shipped, cash flows back to Pyongyang, and the world pretends not to see. But experts are clear. This is not just labor abuse. It is, in their words, contemporary slavery. A system where people cannot refuse work, cannot keep their wages, cannot choose freedom. A system that transforms human lives into foreign exchange. The dilemma is this. If sanctions truly tighten and legal exports are cut off, will North Korea finally end this practice? Or will it expand it further, exporting even more workers into the shadows, squeezing them harder to make up for lost revenue? No one knows. But one thing is certain. Every time a North Korean laborer welds a ship in Poland, or packs fish in China, or lays bricks in Siberia, the ripple reaches far beyond that work site. It reaches the regime's nuclear program. It reaches the luxury lifestyle of Kim Jong-un's inner circle. And it reaches the fragile balance of global security. This is the global dilemma. Do we continue to look away because it is convenient? Or do we confront the reality that modern slavery is fueling nuclear weapons? At Wealth Signal, we uncover the hidden forces shaping our world, the intersections of money, power, and human cost that too often stay in the shadows. If you've stayed with us through this journey, ask yourself, when the next North Korean missile lights up the night sky, will you remember the invisible workers who paid for it with their lives? Because the truth is chilling. As long as the world allows it, every dollar stolen from a North Korean abroad may return one day as a missile over the Pacific.